Can't stop. Won't stop. Till kill the cops. On cell blocks.
Evening audience, sorry I went back to you. I'd like to apologize for that. I'm a former school teacher in Baltimore City. I taught there for 40 years and I loved it. And I'd like to start by saying that if every legislator in this room, I think there are about 25 of you, if every one of you made it your top priority in the upcoming legislative session to eradicate police brutality, even that would not be enough. Even that would not be enough. Racism in this country is highly profitable. And police brutality is a piece of that picture.
Yes.
Now, about a third of corporate profits, appreciate the extra few seconds. About a third of corporate profits in this country derive from the low wages paid to people of color. Racism is a matter of life and death. For the capitalists, they need to preserve it. And police brutality serves them in that effort. Now, let me take us back about 120 years. In the 1890s, during the Jim Crow period, there was a lynching about once every 40 hours. And here we are 120 years later, and we have the police killing of men and women of color about once every 28 hours.
Exactly. Say it. Woo.
This is a 120-year span that we're talking about. Now, in February, there were hearings held about the Police Officers' Bill of Rights, the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, if you get it right. And the head of the Fraternal Order of Police said, look, we don't need to change this because in the last 12 years, 300 police officers have been fired for misconduct. But he's talking about kickbacks and selling drugs and that kind of thing. He's not talking about police brutality because the Sun newspaper pointed out in the last 3 decades in Baltimore City, last 3 decades, prior to Freddie Gray, there were only 5 instances where an on-duty officer was charged with brutality. There was only one that went to court, and he was acquitted. So guess how many cases where on-duty police officers have been indicted for brutality in Baltimore in the last 30 years? 0.
That's right.
0. And that's after many instances of police brutality and police murder. This is intolerable. And if you devoted yourselves and made this your top priority, as I said, that would not even be enough. Because it's a very systemic problem to capitalism, and we have to change this system. Now, I myself was a victim of police brutality. I don't see what the time is now, so I don't know if I can tell you that story or not. May I continue? I used to live in an area of Baltimore City called Pigtown, because there was a slaughterhouse there at one time in history. And we had a very friendly block. It was about half white and half black. We were in each other's homes all the time. We had block parties together. It was a wonderful atmosphere. People would put out card tables on Friday and Saturday night and play cards and play dominoes. And one time someone drank too much. There was a little dispute. Someone called the police. The dispute was not significant. It would have gone away on its own. The police came in with 4 squad cars one way, a little one-way street, 4 the other way, paddy wagon behind the first 4, paddy wagon behind the others. They came out swinging their sticks. In the neighborhood, we immediately forgot about the insignificant problem, and we tried our best to defend each other against the police. There was a woman on our block named Miss Nancy, an elderly woman that everyone loved. She always made food for the block parties. One of the cops hit her with his nightstick. At the same time, an African-American, at the same time, a young white man came around the corner onto our street who lived there. He saw Miss Nancy being hit. He took his belt off, wrapped around his hand, had the buckle out, and smacked the cop in the face. They beat him on the street. They beat him in the patrol car. They beat him at the station. And then the cops tried to brutalize and lock up as many of us as they could. I was one of those that got locked up. There were 7 of us. I think it was 4 black and 3 white, or the other way, I don't remember. So when I was down at the station house being booked, let me show you. The arresting officer had me like this. This is how they do it, right? There's a shelf right here to fill out the paperwork for the arresting, for the documents. And behind the table were seated police officers. So one of the questions was, where do you work? And I didn't want to get in trouble on my job, so I said I prefer not to answer that question. The cop takes his hand out of my pants, throws it. Can I use it for 1 second? Okay. Push it in my lap. He shoves me with all his might against the shelf, which jammed into my chest, and he says listen to me, if you hadn't stuck up for them, you wouldn't have been here in the first place. And what that cop meant was from the bowels of racism, that he hated it that black and white people were friends and stuck up against the police. That's the atmosphere in Baltimore
That's right.
City. Something has to be done about that.
That's right.